This is the whole story of someone who set out to get a Commodore 64 BBS back online after almost 40 years. From the first findings 2 years ago to a working system. We are in the year 1985. Good music is playing on the radio, Formula One is still attractive, and Christian, a Commodore 64 enthusiast from Hamburg, had the ambitious idea to code a Commodore 64 BBS in 100% assembler. Almost 40 years later, I was actually able to track down Christian, whom I knew from school, after such a long time. We even recognized each other decades later. Scene change to Christian's basement in Hamburg. We actually found everything that belonged to the BBS. Here's Christian with the original monitor of the Snobsoft BBS.
So, das heißt, wir sind jetzt schon einen Schritt weiter. Jetzt müssen wir noch die Floppy anschließen. Okay. Steckt drin.
Now the functional test.
Power an.
Actually, a picture.
Okay. Das finde ich nicht so auf Anhieb.
Will the C64 discs still work after all this time?
Mal gucken. Ah, Jay Watson. Da.
Wie geil. Ja, das war von mir dann.
We're lucky here too.
Das konnte man also. Achso, du kannst auch auf Fast umschalten. Dann geht das nämlich alles viel schneller.
The memory of how everything works is also returning soon to the ex-sysop of the BBS. But will we really be able to get everything running after so many decades? Here is the original Snobsoft modem, Christian's self-made creation from 1985, based on the famous Datenklo from the Chaos Computer Club. We also found the pink Cadillac. This is the smaller version of the Snobsoft modem without all the labeled switches. Which made it almost impossible to figure out how everything works, especially since I had to manage without Christian's help, who was meanwhile back in the USA. Yes, he only briefly flew to his domicile in Germany to retrieve the Snobsoft hardware. So the long journey wasn't just for that. He also had other things to do in Hamburg. But you know what I mean. The big clunker here is for my collection. A 2400 baud modem, already with the Hayes standard. Here is already comparatively new stuff. The 56K modem from US Robotics also comes from my treasure chest. And I really don't need to introduce this one, do I? My Commodore 64 from the year 1983. At this point, we are now in February 2023, still fully functional. But more on that later. Well, and this guy here, a UserPort RS232 adapter, turned out to be the first big dead end in the Snobsoft comeback. Here it is, in action. After many attempts and various phone calls with Christian overseas, I finally figured out how to configure the various toggle switches on the Snobsoft modem. It worked. Fantastic. Well, it seemed like everything was working, but more on that later. Here are the toggle switches explained, from left to right, at least what I understood. CCITT on the third switch from the left is set for our telephone standard. Bell would be for the Americans. To the right of it, the switch is set to 300 baud. Makes sense. This is a BBS from 1985 we're talking about. It was the standard back then. Next to it, answer instead of originate is also clear for a BBS. By the way, to the TECS, I was able to connect with the Snobsoft modem without any problems for a test. For that, I naturally set the switch to originate. Absolutely amazing. Even dialing with pulse using the Commodore 64 terminal program, VIPterm, worked. So much for the pulse dialing procedure not working anymore with modern Fritz boxes on fiber optic cable. Tested here on a Fritz box 7530. The status of the Snobsoft comeback project as of February 2023, summarized again. Notice my fake 300 baud look. A very nice plugin for the Vegas editing program makes it possible. I adjusted the output speed of the terminal look to approximately 300 baud in the editing. Here's the setup, neatly arranged for a test run. Okay, let's just draw a veil of silence over the cable mess behind it. Another 2 months later. It is now April 2023. The software of the Snobsoft BBS is running so far. A few weeks later, it turned out to be extremely difficult to establish a stable connection to the Snobsoft modem. Frequent disconnections were the rule. After endless tests, a really useful configuration was found for the calling 56K modem. Here is one of the many test calls from a MS-DOS PC in the next room. Connect. Great. This is how one of the first successful attempts to connect the almost 40-year-old Snobsoft modem/Snobsoft mailbox looked like. Achieving this was a significant milestone for me. This again from the perspective of the Snobsoft BBS. Note the NC in the bottom right corner. Now it goes to NC. So from no carrier to carrier detect. I could pay little attention to an authentic 80s look at this stage of the project. So please excuse the rather unsuitable flat screen. The Snobsoft modem is humming away. The LEDs are pulsating happily. The 1541 is doing its job, shoveling data into the Commodore 64. If you can call shoveling a few kilobytes shoveling. At this stage of the project, where everything is still very shaky if it works at all, my gaze is always glued to the status line of the BBS program. Please, please, please stay on CD. So far, everything is running as it should. There are no premature disconnections with the dreadful premature NC for no carrier. So everything's perfect? The Snobsoft project successfully completed? Unfortunately, not really, because it was only tested locally. So directly over the Fritz box, without a real telephone line or proper telephone dialing. And the big step forward, as I optimistically wrote in that video back then, turned out to be much too enthusiastic. In the real practical test, on the actual telephone line, almost nothing worked as it should. Constant disconnections were the rule. The dreaded NC, no carrier, kept coming up. That is, if there ever was a connection in the first place. The breakthrough came with the idea to make the test calls to Snobsoft using an acoustic coupler. Something like a data phone or similar, which was all we had in 1985. If it has to work with anything, then it must work with the most primitive connection imaginable. So I try such a connection in the TECS. At that time, around mid-2023, this traditional BBS was still reachable via dial-up. No problems with the acoustic coupler. Everything worked perfectly with the TECS. Very interesting. Now the comparison with Snobsoft. The acoustic coupler is connected to the MS-DOS dial-up computer. If there was no stable connection even with an acoustic coupler, it must have been due to a too quiet carrier of the Snobsoft modem. And lo and behold, even with the greatest effort, I couldn't get a stable connection with the dataphone, but I got a lot of garbled characters instead. The attentive viewer might now wonder why I didn't test this right away to save myself months of troubleshooting. Well, hindsight is 2020. In the video back then, I saw a chance to modify the Snobsoft modem to increase the carrier volume. However, that idea fell by the wayside. From today's perspective, I would say a recap, i.e., completely replacing the components such as capacitors would be the right way to go. But I can't do that myself. The trail with the marked resistor also went cold. Exactly. This is what the Snobsoft modem looks like on the inside. Even my further detailed descriptions led to nothing. The status around mid-2023 is one of the first major setbacks in the Snobsoft comeback mission. Nothing is working in practice yet. I decided to shelve the Snobsoft modem for now. My idea: why not use a slightly more modern modem that already supports the Hayes standard? The RS-232 adapter needed for the C64 was already there. In hindsight, the belief that I could get everything running with it was naive. The Snobsoft software was still pre-Hayes, so it didn't know the new standard at all. I tried to work around this with the help of my buddy Hanno with this additional circuit here. This makeshift approach turned out to be a total flop. Okay, next attempt. I remembered that all the source codes of the Snobsoft BBS were successfully transferred from the rediscovered Commodore 64 disks to the PC. By the way, the XUM 1541 was very helpful for this. It runs much faster than the old parallel port solutions. If it were possible to successfully build the BBS program from the source codes, patching the code would also be a way to go. So, modifying the program to make it compatible with standard Hayes modems and, hopefully, leaving all connection problems behind. It can't be that hard, right? Unless you have to deal with a prehistoric assembler from the 70s, which was already outdated by 1985. Exactly. Snobsoft programmer Christian wrote the BBS with this MAE dinosaur back in the day. And Christian had pretty much zero memory of how to operate the thing 40 years later, let alone how he built Snobsoft with it. The MAE turned out to be a real piece of shit. Excuse my language. Complicated, cumbersome. Just think of everything negative. But what wouldn't you do for Snobsoft? Here are a few excerpts from our mails back then. Together with Klaus and Detlef, two brave comrades in the Snobsoft project from Forum 64, I tried to figure out how to operate the cryptic assembler. Eventually, after endless attempts, we managed to tame the MAE. But even when everything ran smoothly through the assembler, like with Forum 64 user Endurian, another very competent helper, Mr. Murphy was already waiting for us. What can go wrong will go wrong. The problem was that only certain versions of the BBS or source codes were compatible with the message base. The special thing about the Snobsoft project should be that all the content from 1986 would be available again after a 40-year hiatus. And now guess what didn't work. Of course, none of the available source codes that I managed to rescue from the C64 disks without read errors, etc., matched the message base, so they weren't compatible. There were also further compatibility issues with certain versions, especially with the user list of over 700 users from 1986, which also definitely needed to be preserved. Luckily, by the summer of 2023, I was able to mobilize additional support for the project, and we've been actively exchanging ideas. Exactly. C64 coding genius Grupaz is now involved. Here's the current status summarized. And my questions to Grupaz about how to proceed. From his response, it would depend whether the Snobsoft project will ultimately fall through or be successfully completed. Because by now it was clear, after all the failures, that only a manual disassembly of the code could save us. This was followed by a radio silence of almost 1.5 months. To be honest, I had almost given up hope of getting all the BBS stuff sorted out. Then this message from Grupas hit me like a bomb in late summer 2023. He actually managed to disassemble the BBS. Now the Snobsoft comeback mission was back on track. There were still some hurdles to overcome, but everything should now go fairly quickly. All the prerequisites for modifying the code were now in place. By the way, we had now completely parted ways with the cumbersome MAE. Although "we" is not quite accurate. Grupas is the coder here. Development then continued on the PC with the excellent cross-assembler ACME. Grupas soon had the first modifications of the BBS towards Hayes compatibility ready, and we encountered the next problems. This was the first time I noticed his particularly analytical way of pinpointing problems, which turned out to be a true blessing as the project progressed. Something was wrong with my user port modem adapter. Tests with the C64 program user port dump showed that the data carrier detect was not coming through. But DCD is absolutely essential for the functioning of Snobsoft. That means a new user port modem interface was needed. The choice fell on the G-Link LT, which should definitely provide DCD. Speaking of delivery, since I had to order the interface all the way from the USA, it meant waiting for a few weeks. It was worth the wait. Everything worked now. Now, Grupas could fully concentrate on coding and making Snobsoft Hayes compatible. Here's another interesting detail. With the Hayes modification, we killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Now the BBS works not only with real modem hardware, but also in the Commodore 64 emulator. And that works together with the modem emulator TCP/SAR. What's really exciting now is whether the Hayes command for hanging up will also work in the emulation. If we can't enter command mode, there's no chance that the BBS will function in this emulation environment. The quick progress with the Snobsoft comeback project I mentioned earlier was a bit premature. The answer to the critical question about command mode took a whole month to arrive. The relieving message came on September 5th, 2023. As usual, the coding genius wrote laconically about another milestone. Check this out. I checked it out, and as usual, everything worked for Grupas. Everything? Well, you still remember Mr. Murphy. There were some unwanted side effects. Some BBS commands were now causing problems. Garbled text outputs were added to that. The cause was found by the Commodore 64 machine language expert a few days later. Memory shortage. Just fix it easily, or will this be a bigger issue? The usual laconic response from Grupas just 1 day later. Try this. On September 10th, 2023, would be a real stunner. We had reached our goal. Everything was working so far. The Snobsoft comeback after 40 years could begin. The following video was filmed before the one just seen. Yes, in December 2023, my Commodore 64 from 1983 was still fully functional. The sequence shows a typical BBS call from that time. Of course, the acoustic coupler must not be missing. Now for a bit of music to lighten things up. The band Dial Up Dreams with their song Snobsoft Calling.
Yeah, the screen lights up, light it up. The lines are buzzing, it's the place to be. Dial in with the touch of dial. Commodore 64 cold dreams, you'll see. I'll log in, log in, log in to where code and passion blend. Yeah. Rotary turning, spin it around. The numbers click and you're in the know. Floppy disk spinning, the machine code dance. 500 strong on lines that glow. Keep an eye on the bill as the hours grow. Snobsoft calling. Pick up the pace. Call now, call out. Where bits and bytes come alive like electric dreams. Over 500 minds converge on Snobsoft's realm where the data streams. Snobsoft, ignite the code. Commodore's heart, where secrets bestowed. Yeah. Snobsoft calling. Yeah. Modem screeches like a wild guitar. A symphony of beeps to Snobsoft we start. Acoustic coupler in the loop. Don't let it drop. Where 1541 drives never stop. Snobsoft's calling. On the air tonight. To the tune of 8-bit. Under neon light. Now it's Hanno's term, set the screen alight. Terminal's ready. The code unfolds in the phosphor night. Christian's machine code. Lines pure and clean. Type it right line by line. Assembler dreams. Your 6502 shrine. Call up, boot up in digital flight. Snobsoft's calling through the electronic night. Snobsoft's calling. Pick up the pace. Call now, call now.
Now you see, 5 ways to get a C64 BBS online in 2024. Über die wieder große Resonanz zu meinen letzten Videos habe ich mich sehr gefreut. Sowas bin ich bei meinem kleinen YouTube-Kanal gar nicht gewöhnt. Bitte macht weiter so. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen. Falls euch das Video gefallen hat, lasst mir ein Like bzw. Abo da. Teilt das Video bzw. empfehlt es weiter.
Yeah, the screen lights up, light it up. The lines are buzzing, it's the place to be. Dial in with the touch of dial. Commodore